And if not, I'm just telling you there's a map up. Because as we get into today's message, we're going to be talking about a series that deals with the D word. This D word is divorce. I know a lot of times we may talk about marriage and premarital things and postmarital things. Well, now we're talking about divorce, part of our series that we're working through right now. And the reason is because there are so many people who don't understand what marriage is that they opt for divorce. And so they dissolve the relationship that they had, whether it's a saint or an ain't. People don't realize God has designed marriage that when a man and a woman get married, the two become one flesh. And anything that is done that breaks that causes a lot of sometimes irreparable harm, but God can always restore for those who return to him. Okay? So now, here we are. I want you to go with me. We're back in Israel, first century, and Yeshua has just finished a teaching tour in his home area of Galilee. And he's now going down to Judea, to a place beyond the Jordan River. Sometimes it's called the Perea, or the beyond. We're going to catch up with him in Matthew chapter 19, verses 3 through 10. Some Pharisees came to Yeshua, testing him and asking, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason at all?" Because in those days, if you burned his toast, he could say, "I give you a bill of divorce, go away." And what some people don't know is in those days, a woman could also divorce her husband. Verse 4, Yeshua answered and said, "Haven't you read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." A phrase that I've learned and used sometime about this relationship is that they would leave, cleave, and then weave together a new life. That's what's supposed to happen when two people get married. Verse 6, so they're no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man or woman separate. They said to him, the Pharisees that is, "Why then did Moses command to give her a certificate of divorce and send her away?" Please understand, he didn't command them to do that. It was an instruction that was set for an exception. Verse 8, Yeshua replies, "Because of the hardness of your heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning, it wasn't this way. And I tell you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery." Now, after hearing this brief conversation, we go to verse 10, where his disciples say to Yeshua, "If the relationship of the husband and his wife is like this, it's better not to marry." You know, Paul told the Corinthian people, being married narrows your focus and reduces some aspects of your freedom outside of your household. That's in 1 Corinthians 7, 32 through 35. He says, Paul, "I want you to be free from concerns. A man who isn't married is concerned about the Lord's concerns and how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the world's concerns, how he can please his wife. His attention is divided. A woman who isn't married or is a virgin is concerned about the Lord's concerns so that she can be dedicated to God in both body and spirit. But a married woman is concerned about the world's concerns, how she can please her husband." Verse 35, "I'm saying this for your own advantage. It's not to restrict you, but rather to promote effective and consistent service to the Lord without distraction." Hear this clearly. Some of us were told when you get into ministry, God will take care of your family. So where God sends you, where he tells you to go, you go. That is not biblical. He did not say, wherever I send you to go, you go and just go. And you have a wife, and then you have children. And you're thinking God's going to take care of your family and your children while you're out there taking care of other people's family and their children. No. What happens when we get married is our sphere of activity becomes smaller. Why? Instead of being able to minister because I'm single to masses, my ministry now focuses on the home God is building me, and the ministry becomes the overflow of what I learn in the laboratory of life, getting to know other humans, especially when you grow humans. But let me tell you this. Regardless of what Yahweh intended, according to the American Psychological Association, approximately 40 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce. The divorce rate for second marriages is even higher. About 60 to 67% of second marriages end in divorce. And some of the common reasons for divorce are communication issues. According to some research, ongoing communication difficulties are the #1 reason couples divorce in the United States. According to one study, 67.5% of marriages that ended did so primarily due to communication problems. Communication is the foundation of a successful and a healthy relationship. Another reason was the level of education. The divorce rate for individuals with a high school education or less was higher than the divorce rate for individuals with a college education or more. There's a reason to maybe stay in school. Infidelity is estimated about 20 to 40% of marriages end because of infidelity. Fourth reason, religious beliefs. Various studies show the divorce rate for couples of different religion is higher than those who have the same religion or non-religious. But couples of the same religion face higher than average divorce rates. Jewish people, that is, I want to say, those who follow rabbinic teachings, they tend to have the highest divorce rates, followed by born-again Christians, other types of Christians, which they say they're out there, and then some agnostics and atheists. The fifth and final one that we'll look at, and not all of them that could be used in a divorce proceeding, are financial problems. It's estimated that financial problems contribute to 20 to 40% of all divorces. Communication is on the top. Infidelity and finances are really in there as well, but there are some other things that can contribute to that, to what will lead a person to a divorce. Now, here's something I'm wondering if you knew about this, that the median cost of a divorce in the United States is $7,000. That helps me understand this song I heard people playing when I was growing up. It's cheaper to keep her, because you're going to pay. Not only are you going to pay to dissolve a marriage, but you're going to pay after that. You're going to pay her. It's called alimony. If you have children, you're going to pay child support. You're going to just keep paying and paying and paying and paying and paying. Now, this doesn't say that just because it might be cheaper to keep her or cheaper to keep him, that you should stay if the relationship says otherwise, but that's something else we'll get to in our series. Divorce, the average cost of a divorce, that's the median, the average is about $15,000 to $20,000. And with over 600,000 Americans divorcing every year, divorce is an $11 billion a year industry. Yeah, there's a lot of money in helping people separate what God has put together, but that's not a good thing. Marriage has a purpose. Marriage has a plan. Marriage should result in a particular product. Getting married for the right reasons permits God's primary purpose to be experienced. However, getting married for the wrong reasons creates problems that could prolong, prevent, or even prohibit God's purpose from being experienced by those who've gotten married. Marriage is a covenant of companionship. You will not find that statement in the Bible in that way. This is how we understand it, because we see a covenant is an agreement, binding commitment. Now, a true covenant means you're going to take an animal, a goat, a lamb, something else. You're going to kill it, and then you're going to walk in a figure 8 around it, the two people that are involved in the covenant. We don't do that. If you did that at a wedding, you would clear the place out. But the concept that it is a binding agreement is what a covenant is really all about when it relates to marriage. Marriage is also a contract for a civil union. Yes, I've heard some of my fellow pastors and teachers teach marriage is not a contract. It is a covenant. No, it's both. Because see, the covenant is what you establish with each other, and you do that before God. The contract, it's an agreement enforceable by law. That means if there are certain things that he doesn't do or she doesn't do, we can bring the law in and say, hey, we need some help here because they're not doing certain things we agreed to. You might say, well, when I got married, if you're married, we didn't have a contract. Did you say any kind of a vow? If you said any kind of a vow, you made an oath. You made a civil contract along with the covenant contract, or the covenant, that you made. You're thinking, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. When a person doesn't know or understand the purpose, plan, or product of marriage, when things like communication issues, education differences, infidelity, different religious perspectives, and finances come about like a tornado, they can harden the heart of one or both parties. When stresses are applied in a marriage, it takes wisdom to know whether or not you need to wait it out, work it out, or walk away. Yeshua didn't stutter or skip a beat when he said, whoever divorces his wife or husband, except for immorality, and marries another woman or man, commits adultery. Let me make something very clear. When it's needful, there is a right divorce and there is a wrong divorce. How can I say that? Well, I don't know if if you've read in your Bible as I've read in mine, Yahweh, our God, got a divorce. And if he got a divorce, that means there must be a right way and a wrong way if the relationship comes to that. He had waited. That's Yahweh. He had waited and tried over and over and over again to work it out. He tried to wait. He tried to work it out, but it came to a point where he had to walk away, even though he never completely gave up. Now, I know some people are probably wondering, where are you getting this? Jeremiah chapter 3, verses 7 and 8, where Yahweh is speaking, I thought that after she, speaking of Israel, this was during the time when Israel and Judah were two separate nations or kingdoms. I thought that after she had done all this, all these adulteries, all these harlotries, all these establishing false covenants with other people, that she would return to me. But she didn't. And her unfaithful sister Judah saw it. So I gave faithless Israel her certificate of divorce and sent her away because of all her adulteries. And knowing by experience how devastating divorce can be, Yahweh tells his people in Malachi 2:16, I hate divorce. The New Living Translation puts it this way, for I hate divorce, says Yahweh, the God of Israel. To divorce your wife is to overwhelm her with cruelty, says Yahweh of heaven's armies. So guard your heart. Do not be unfaithful to your wife. A divorce puts the other person at risk. So guard your heart so it doesn't become hard. So when the storms of life come, and they will, and the stresses of the day increase, and the icing on the cake is the stupid stuff that we sometimes do, you need to know when to wait, when to work it out, and when to walk away. Now, regarding the 5 things mentioned as to why some people divorce, not one of them by itself qualifies as a biblical reason to divorce. Let me remind you, not communication issues, not educational differences, not infidelity, not religious differences, not financial difficulties. There are other reasons that people find to divorce as well. The most famous one that I hate to hear, irreconcilable differences. What couldn't you get together? And of course, there are various kinds of abuse. But right now, the goal isn't to focus on that deeply, but to help us see the impact of divorce from God's perspective and why he hates it. Before two people come together in holy matrimony, you've been there. Dearly beloved, we are gathered today in the sight of God and these witnesses. You know, I used to think, wow, where is that in the Bible? And I went from Genesis to Revelation and I couldn't find it. And one day I saw creeping out of a person's Bible, it was like, it was something sticking up. And I learned there's something called the Minister's Manual. And that's where most people were getting the marriage ceremony and services from. So you won't find that as we are used to hearing it in the Bible. It is just something that we have developed and used when we're officiating at a wedding. But before two people come together in that holy matrimony, they should see themselves as coming from two separate countries, separate and distinct countries, because each country has its own communication style, its own culture, and its own acceptable ways of conduct. One of the first things you should learn about another person, even before romantic involvement comes up, is make sure you learn their language and teach them yours. We're going to touch on some of those signs of communication issues at this time. We're not going to go through all 5. We will through our series. One of the things that leads to communication issues is a passive-aggressive behavior. What does that look like? Well, frequent silent treatments. That's also called stonewalling. You did this, but I'm not talking to you. And I'm not telling you I'm not talking to you because I'm not talking to you. Jokes that are actual thoughts, often with a sarcastic bent. You speak sarcastically to one another or one over the other. Condescending answers to a remark or accusation, typically in a sharp, angry, or cutting manner. Shifting the blame, not owning your part. We saw that in Genesis 3 with Adam and Eve, his wife. Or yelling and screaming over insignificant things, like the most mundane problems can spark blazing arguments. Should not be. There's also an increased resentment, a feeling of indignant displeasure or persistent ill will at something regarded as wrong, an insult, or an injury. The resentment builds up, smoldering beneath the surface and ticking like a time bomb. This happens when there's not enough openness and emotional intimacy in the relationship. Talking about how you feel about something because you do. This tends to be more difficult for those of us who are men than it is for most women. However, talking about your feelings is important. Why? Feelings fuel.
Can I get a slip for withdrawal?
I need you to mute yourself there, brother. All right. Feelings fuel beliefs, and beliefs dictate behaviors. Emotional intimacy directly depends on how safe you feel about sharing your thoughts with your partner. Keeping silent about your feelings will eat away and ruin the closeness you have with each other. And the third thing is sharing life with a complete stranger. We often say our partner knows us better than we know ourselves, and that's most likely true because they see the us that we don't always see or we cover up. But when communication grinds to a halt, you start having that awful feeling that you're living with a complete stranger. If the ability to communicate fades away completely, there's nothing to share with your partner. Sadly, even if something nice happens to you, you won't even feel like sharing it. And I use the word partner, but I'm talking about your marital partner, and I don't say partner 50-50. In a marital relationship, that relationship should be 100%, 100%, because there are times when the person you're married to won't be able to give their 100%, so you need to cover. And likewise, you aren't always going to give your 100%, and so they need to cover as well. So what can we do about communications issues? Well, we can wait for change. We can work it out together, or we can walk away. See, identify the situation as if it was an in-the-moment thing, or is it temporary, or is it a pattern layered in their life? So these options, wait and talk about it later. Sometimes you do need to give people a moment to kind of chill. Work out the issue that's come up. Find out what we need to do to resolve the situation. or walk away and take a breather. But don't take too much time before addressing the issue, because getting used to taking time apart when you're upset develops another pattern that's not good. If it's a pattern and you wait, again, if it's a pattern and you wait, most likely nothing's going to change. If you choose to work it out, the emphasis is going to be on the work. So you plan to communicate. Here's what both parties need to know. Having a solid relationship is based on cooperation and not competition, and that goes both ways. Remember, spoken language is not the only way to communicate. We also communicate through our senses, especially sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. So small tokens of appreciation and gestures should be given. Give them a hug, leave a note, bring home a small thoughtful gift on occasions. Just do some things that are unexpected, but you know would be appreciated. There's nothing wrong, though, if you need to express something that is negative on occasion. It shouldn't be an everyday thing and all the time thing. But it's not that you're expressing something negative, it's how you express them that really matters. If there's something negative you need to put out there, make it constructive instead of critical and destructive. And don't dwell on the negative. Avoid inflammatory words. I remember a pastor a long time ago was the first person I heard say this. He says, you know, when he counseled with people, his name was Brother Cross, Senior. And he said, when I counsel with people, and they would say, you this and you that, and you, and fingers are pointing and voices are elevating. And he says, you know what? As we talk together, rather than saying you, say I. You know, you do this. Well, I feel this way when you do this. Or you're taking the steam and the punch and the impact out of it, because you typically, and I would typically, we say like you always, or you never, or you this, and you put such an emphasis on things that are probably somewhat skewed. No person always does anything, and it's highly irregular. Someone never does certain things. So some you statements can push your partner into a defense mode, and you don't want that, and you don't want to be put into a defense mode. So take the heat off the conversation. And one more thing, lower your defenses. Don't be ready to fight and say, I'm gonna stand my ground. You know, maybe you're the one preventing proper communication from taking place because you're going to stand your ground rather than trying to connect. The main thing should be sharing where you're at in the situation and then getting some feedback, not to prove yourself right and your partner wrong. That's, again, it's not a competition, but what to do. What should you do if you sense that there's a communication issue? 3 things. They all begin with the letter A. Acknowledge there's a communication issue in a particular area. Adjust your belief and behavior about communicating, that you both create a safe place. And accountability. If you don't hold yourself accountable in some way, then you really won't progress, because no one is saying, well, you said this, but you didn't quite do that. So how can we get you moving? Yahweh designed marriage in the beginning for one man and one woman, that they would leave, cleave, and weave to each other for a lifetime. During that lifetime, in that relationship, there are going to be internal and external storms. The issue isn't about the storms that come, but the foundation on which the marriage is built. And we're going to talk more about that next time. Shalom.